So, I'm going to give a brief review of the flyers that are available for Sisters of Battle or Adepta Sororitas. And before I start this, I should point out these are all from Forge World, and depending on your opinion, you can say, well, I don't like Forge World because it's not in a codex, it's separate from a codex or whatever. It's published by a company owned by Games Workshop, the entire maker of Warhammer 40k, so rejecting Forge World is up to you. I mean, you can reject any codex you don't want to play against. You can reject anything you don't want to play against. People argue back to the third and the second edition where you had to have opponent approval for special things. Well, you always have to have your opponent's approval. Someone could say, I won't play against your Necron army because it's all flyers. Or, no, I just won't play against 6 Helldrakes. So it's up to your opponent, but obviously Forge World is made by Games Workshop, so when they say 40k approved, it's not like a third company, has said, oh, well, this works for 40k. It's Forge World, which is owned by GW. That diatribe aside. So the Sisters of Battle do not have anything that is a flyer in their digital codex, and they have nothing with Skyfire, which is kind of sad. They're the only codex which has come out in 6th edition that has nothing to deal with flyers and has no flyers of its own or flying monstrous creatures. So what do? Well, you can look at Imperial Armor or Aeronautica, and you'll find that Sisters of Battle have 3 flyers that they are allowed to take for their army, specifically as opposed to as allies. And now these have been FAQ'd because they had some problems when they first came out. And I'm just going to run through them. I'm not going to talk about all the stats. Hopefully you can see the pictures on the camera, but not the full stat line. So starting here on the left, we have the Aquila Lander. And this can also be used by Inquisitors and an Imperial Guard. And it looks a lot like the Dark Angels flyer. Matter of fact, I can't find the Lander on the Forge World website, but I would think that anyone could use the Dark Angels flyer and just paint it up right, and it would be the Aquila Lander. It's a decent flyer, but it's not great. It costs a little too much for what you get. At 110 points with no upgrades, you're looking at something that's not as competitive as a Valkyrie or a Vendetta, but Sisters can use it, and they can't use Valkyries or Vendettas. It does have a transport capacity of 7, and this was where the original error is in the rules, because it has the supersonic rule, which doesn't let it go into hover mode, and then it also has the hover unit type. But in the FAQ, it clearly states that if it goes into hover mode, then it doesn't have supersonic at that time. So no problem, you can put 7 individuals in it, and you can deploy them out, or you can fly them around and deploy them out later. It has Deep Strike, which many flyers have lost. Death from the Skies took Deep Strike away from all the standard core deep flyers, but this one still has it. It doesn't have a great set of weapons. It has a heavy bolter, which you could upgrade to a multi-laser or an auto cannon, but it's not an awesome weapon. But it does give you a flyer that lets you move somewhere into the backfield and drop people out. But it's not an assault vehicle. So I think for 110 points, it's a nice looking flyer. I actually like the Dark Angels flyer, but it's not as good as you could get. So then number 2. The Arvis Lighter. This is much hated flyer by many people, and they don't like it for a number of reasons. But it's a little less armored than a Rhino, and it costs 75 points. But here's where it's quite cool. It has a transport capacity of 12, and it comes in a unit composition of 1 to 3. So you can take this as a fast attack choice for Sisters of Battle, and you could take 3 of them. And if you took 3, you could potentially put 36 individuals in it. So you could put 36 Repentia, or 24 Repentia and a bunch of Sororitas Command Squad girls with power swords or axes. Or you could put 36 Death Cult Assassins and Crusaders in it. whatever you do, you can put a lot of individuals in it. And because they are a squadron, when you roll for reserves, all 3 of them come in at the same time if they came in as a squadron. So this thing has deep strike, or it's a flyer, either one. So it can come in by deep strike and drop people off, which is great. It gives you a drop pod. It gives you something that actually puts your Repentia or your close combat girls way downfield. And then, it's likely to be blown up, but I think your opponent will have bigger issues, and if they're going to blow this up, that's great. They didn't shoot your Repentia. And when you disembark from it, you could clearly use the vehicle itself as cover to protect the girls when they get out. So I think it basically gives Sisters a drop pod that either moves 36 inches from the edge of the board and then drops the girls off the next round, or just deep strikes in and the girls get out of it. So, on top of that, it has a little bit of weaponry, but it snap fires all of them. So, I'm not sure I would really take the weapons. It's a little expensive to buy the weapons, considering they're snap firing, even though they're pretty much all twin linked. So that being that, I think the Arvis Lighter, for all the people that complain about it, they haven't thought that Sisters don't have a great way of getting a lot of people downrange all at once. This vehicle does that. You take it in a squadron and you drop all 3 or 2 and drop a whole bunch of close combat girls out of it. And I think it will work for that. And at 75 points, it's not a bad investment. It's even scoring in the Scourging. So it's a transport. The final one, which had no pictures in Aeronautica, is the Avenger Strike Fighter. And this is a heavy support choice, so it's not a transport. It doesn't compete with the transports. It does compete with the Exorcist, and that's where I think it has its problem. It's not a bad flyer. It's got a little better front armor than a Vendetta or a Valkyrie. It's front armor 12, but it's only got 2 hull points, which does make it slightly squishy. It's got those wing-mounted las cannons, but they're not twin-linked. It has a heavy bolter that can shoot at something. It's basically like Power of the Machine Spirit. It lets it shoot at a separate target. And then it has this Avenger bolt cannon, which is a heavy 7 AP3 strength 6 weapon. So it's a pretty good thing at blowing up your infantry on the ground. So it's a decent heavy flyer. The question would be what its role's gonna really be, because it's got deep strike, it's got supersonic, it's got strafing run, so it can really just tear up people on the ground. But it's ballistic skill 3, because apparently the Sister flying it, or the Navy pilot flying it's just not that good a gunner. I'm not sure at 150 points if this vehicle is worth taking over an Exorcist. Yeah, it could shoot at other flyers, but I don't know if I would highly recommend it. It's an expensive model. There are ways to work around it. I've seen people mod the Dark Angels flyer once again to make it into the Avenger Strike Fighter, but I think it's an okay choice. I'm just not sure it's as good as the Exorcist for most missions, and it has no transport capacity, so it's questionable. But the other two, I'm pretty sure the Arvis Lighter is actually a good choice for bringing a whole bunch of girls onto the board, and then possibly moving people around on the board near the end of the game, particularly if they have invul saves, so even if the thing crashes, the girls can get out. And then the Aquila Lander, it's a cool, can carry 7 individuals, so it transports your Death Cult assassins or something, or moves people near the end of the game, the old Necron trick where you fly off the board and then fly back on and then drop people off. So it's good for that. It's a nice fighter jet, I think. So that would be my review on the various fighters or flyers.